hope everybody's having a great Monday afternoon here on the 7th of March. When it comes to scheduling, we had to, move things around. I hope you're able to find us. If not, we'll still be here, on YouTube and Twitter and Rumble to be able to watch later. Speaking of those platforms, we thank Restream.io for allowing us to broadcast to all those platforms at the same time. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. This is Scriptural Salvation Baptist Tabernacle. My name is Andy. Welcome to my living room. To my left, we have Richard. Paul.
Not you.
Steve. To my right, you can see Sweetheart Doggy.
Yeah.
She's there.
Yes, we have on camera.
Just off camera, we have Hannah. And joining us shortly, we will have Grace and my wife, Elizabeth.
And the baby is also off camera.
Unable to be here today is Jacob, who had just too many activities to be able to join us. So between jazz band and next week it'll be tennis. Jacob will practically live at RFA on Monday afternoons.
I also might too.
You're not going to be at RFA for tennis. Wow. You've got. We moved church so that you could come to church, right? Yeah. So, like I said, with activities, there's now drama club is in full swing. Tennis starts next week. Jacob still does jazz band. So we're, a busy family to say the least. But we'll manage, and we're glad that you can join us. Let's see. In the news department, our baby and my wife are what did he call it? Was it a monitor closely? Yeah, he called it a monitor closely pregnancy, which means she spends extra trips out to both Rome and Syracuse to be monitored, to do with the baby's small size and with something with their detecting the placenta. So if you could throw in some extra prayers for the health of the baby, that would be appreciated.
Excuse me.
A lot of love, heart, and soul goes into our children, and more so for the unborn ones before they have a chance to live yet. So we're waiting on her to come and join us. So please pray for her. We're going to get started with a song called My Redeemer Lives. Now, it wasn't supposed to be the song. I was going to pick a different one. I had bought a whole bunch of CDs of old hymns, and I was all excited, and I was getting ready to put this hymn CD into my computer to get the song off of there, to get it ready to use for service. And my computer does not have a disk drive. So next week I'll have a CD player right here in the living room, and we'll go from there. But, you win some, you lose some. So we'll go with My Redeemer Lives, and it's fine by me. All right.
Can you unplug my charger for the computer?
Oh, no, not that button.
It's not important right now, Roger.
Okay.
Let's see. My Redeemer Lives. Okay, Richard, I'm going to need you to go over there and hit the button, the Windows button. Or else it won't let me. Oh.
He.
I'm going to need to hit it again.
Spinner.
Hit it again.
It's just a...
Hit the button again.
Okay.
Nobody is listening. Excuse me?
I'm trying to make it so it doesn't do that thing where when I finish the last PowerPoint presentation, everything
And I
shuts
call-
off.
Yeah.
But
As
all right,
long as you watch one of the streams.
all right.
Steve, are you going to sing the song?
Pretty sure I hit the. Be nice if the song played. He rescued my soul. His blood has covered my sin. I believe. I believe. My shame is taken away. My pain is healed in His name. I believe. I believe. I'll raise a banner. My Lord has conquered the grave. My Redeemer lives. My Redeemer lives. My Redeemer lives. My Redeemer lives. I know He rescued my soul. His blood has covered my sin. I believe. I believe. My shame is taken away. My pain is healed in His name. I believe. I believe. I'll raise a banner. 'Cause my Lord has conquered the grave. My Redeemer lives. 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 You lift my burden. I rise with you. I'm dancing on this mountain top to see your kingdom come. My Redeemer lives. 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 Okay, I didn't start to play something else. That's good. If you didn't catch it, the name of that song was "My Redeemer Lives."
I think everybody should know that because it kept on replaying over and over again.
So there was a bit in popular Christian music where they would just they'd make a song and they repeat the same lyric multiple times, and that is a song from that period. Our lesson, we're continuing on in the book of Genesis. Last week we talked about Sodom and Gomorrah and how, yes, it's a tragic tale of how guests were treated badly, but that's what the story is illustrated as. It's not there to try to tell you about the evils of homosexuality. It's about how when people are treated badly in the ancient Near East. And this week, we're going to close off a storyline, but it's still within the Abraham narrative. All right, so Richard, I'm going to have your help again. Hold on. All right. Okay, Richard, hit that. Wait, hold on. Hold it. No, not yet. All right. What?
Upside down.
Richard, that wasn't the time yet. Did it work? Okay, now hit that button for me. All right.
Camera on.
Okay.
Oh,
Bless you.
papers.
This is our 16th lesson in the book of Genesis, and it is on chapters 20 and 21.
Psalm 23.
And we're going to start off with a reading by Grace,
Gracie.
who has a mouthful of food.
The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie and down in green
Pastures.
pastures. He leads me beside still waters.
Very good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Paul. Stand still, Paul.
He restores my soul. He leads
Leads.
me in paths of righteousness for his name's
Sake.
sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me.
You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Your endpoint.
No, you anoint.
Oh, you anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows.
And I'll read Jacob's part because I thought he would be here today, but he is unable to be. So, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. That psalm is probably one of the more famous psalms.
Dad, I thought you said I got 1 and 2.
You did.
You got 1 and 2.
Yep. Verses 1 and 2. So normally, when you read a psalm, verse 1 is not normally labeled because it's the first one. Okay. We're going to start off with chapter 20, verses 1 through 7. Chapter 20, verses... I made it disappear. It was there.
Nice one.
Verses 1 through 7.
That's one sleepy doggy.
All right.
Genesis 20. From there, Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negev and lived between Kadesh and Shur. And he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. But God came to Abimelech in a dream by night and said to him, "Behold, you are a dead man because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a man's wife." Now Abimelech had not approached her, so he said, "Lord, will you kill an innocent people? Did he not himself say to me, 'She is my sister'?" And she herself said, "He is my brother. In the integrity of my heart and the innocence of my hands I have done this." Then God said to him in the dream, "Yes, I know that you have done this in the integrity of your heart, and it was I who kept you from sinning against me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. Now then, return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, so that he will pray for you, and you shall live. But if you do not return her, know that you shall surely die, you and all were yours.
Okay. Okay. Abraham journeyed toward the territory of the Negeb. So he's at the place where he was at, where he could see the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he decides to leave and head south toward Egypt. Maybe he didn't want to see the destruction of Sodom from his old tent. We're not given a reason why he moves, but he moves. Me personally, I don't think I want to look out my back door and see a destroyed city every day or the ruins thereof, so maybe I'd move too. And he sojourned in Gerar. Now, Gerar is later on was a Philistine city near the coast. There are 5 major Philistine cities on the coast of Israel, and they are a major player in later Israelite history. But right now, the Philistines haven't shown up yet. Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, "She is my sister." This is something we've never heard before, right? Remember when he went down to Egypt and he says to the Pharaoh, "She is my sister"? Now, he's doing it again. But this time, it's to a person named Abimelech. Now, the question is it a name or is it a title? In the language that Abimelech comes to us from, Abi comes from the word Abba, which means father, and Melech means king. So Abimelech could be father of the king, it could be father king, or the king is my father. In my humble opinion, it's the title of a king, and we'll make that point later. The Lord comes to Abimelech in a dream and threatens Abimelech to give Sarah back because Sarah is not a sister. Sarah is married to Abraham. Of course, Abimelech did not know anything about this, and it seems harsh to us that a man would be killed for touching another man's wife, and Abimelech thinks it's very strange because he hadn't even made an advance on her yet. Yet, he wasn't killed, so within God's master plan, Abimelech is warned, and he gives Sarah right back, and nothing happens to her. And the Lord knew the whole time that Sarah would be fine. We just have to remember that it's not about our plan and our ways. It's about how God does things. The other reason that it is done this way, that God threatens or seems harsh, is peer pressure. The ungodly suffer because of Abraham's poor thinking and poor planning. And this happens another time in Scripture from a man you might remember, named of Jonah.
Oh, yeah.
Jonah made a bad decision where he went on a boat, was trying to run away from God, and everybody on the boat said, "Why are we getting destroyed by the storm? The only way this storm would happen is if God was mad at somebody," and Jonah, they traced it to Jonah. Everybody on that boat suffered because Jonah wasn't listening to God, and that's what's happening here with Abraham. It says Abimelech and everybody in his household was suffering because of Abraham. And it's the same type of idea that happened with Jonah. Is it extreme to kill everybody in this sense? Like Abimelech takes Sarah, he didn't realize that she was who she was, but if he had touched her or done anything wrong to her, God would have killed him. Is this extreme? Well, there are several instances in the Bible where things look extreme. Now, Uzzah was a person in the Old Testament that when David was king, he had strict instructions to only move the ark by using the high priests. And what they were supposed to do is they were supposed to put the ark on long sticks and carry it. They're supposed to move the Ark of the Covenant. And what David decided to do, he was in a hurry, he put it on a cart. And one of the oxen pulling the cart stumbled, and the ark looked like it was going to fall, and Uzzah reached up and touched it, and God killed him instantly. This seems extreme to us, but in this time in the Old Testament, this was meant to send a reason. Nadab and Abihu were sons of Aaron, and they were training to become priests as well. And they went against God's instructions, and they got fire from the tabernacle, but they didn't get it from the proper place. They put fire in their I can't remember what those things are called. In their incense, but they made fire, but they got it from not where they were supposed to. And the Bible calls it unauthorized fire, and Nadab and Abihu were killed because they went against instructions. It seems extreme and intense, but it was God sending a message. Now, just when you think that God is only strict to the people in the Old Testament and only kills them for strange reasons, we meet Ananias and Sapphira. And they were members of the church in the very, very early years after Jesus had died and before John wrote Revelation. So somewhere between 33 AD and 90 AD. So somewhere in there, and this was very early in the church. And Ananias and Sapphira owned a plot of land, and they sold it, and they told each other that they weren't going to tell the church that they sold, how much money they sold it for. So they went before everybody in the church, and they brought this money, and they said, listen, look, we sold this property, and we bring this gift before God, and they put it down. And Peter looks at Ananias and goes, you're lying to me. This isn't all the money. And Ananias died. So Sapphira, his wife, wasn't there. She was off busy, and she comes later and walks in, and Peter goes, so how's that plot of land that you sold? And she goes, oh, we gave you all the money. No, you didn't. You're lying to me. And she died too. This may seem extreme, but it was a message to the new church that they needed to be honest to God, and honest with God, and honest with other believers. And what this talks about is the holiness of God and his power. Also, it talks about how God doesn't deal in what we think is fair. God has a completely different set of rules. And to him, setting these examples showed people who he was and the power of everything that his entire being was. And there are other examples like Uzzah, Nadab, and Abihu, Ananias, and Sapphira. There are other examples like that where it seems extreme to us, but it's really not, because it's God's message and it's his plan. Now, God says to Abimelech, Abraham is still a prophet. Abraham is still a prophet, although he's living in sin. He lied. He did the whole "she is my sister" thing again, like he did last time with the Pharaoh. But God still considers him a prophet and a very important person. Now we will listen to verses 8 through 13. Chapter 20. Oh, I almost X'd out of the wrong thing. 8 through 13. Okay.
So Abimelech rose early in the morning and called all his servants and told them all these things. And the men were very much afraid. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, what have you done to us? And how have I sinned against you, that you have brought on me and my kingdom a great sin? You have done to me things that ought not to be done. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you see that you did this thing? Abraham said, I did it because I thought there is no fear of God at all in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, She is indeed my sister, the daughter of my father, though not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God caused me to wander from my father's house, I said to her, This is the kindness you must do to me. At every place to which we come, say of me, He is my brother.
Uh, oh yeah, I'm still in this one. 8 through 13. A pagan king that has more morals than Abraham. It's not the first time that we've encountered it here. It was the same thing that happened with the Pharaoh, where he was like, "You're doing an evil thing to me by lying." Abraham was lying. But what this also teaches us is that even though we have God in our lives and we're committed believers, we still resort, and we're not perfect people, that sometimes we still do sin. And it's a common thing, and it happens. Then Abimelech called Abraham and said to him, and gives him this whole lecture on what's right and wrong. Abraham should have known all of these things. He's already been told, don't go from place to place and tell everybody that Sarah is your sister. She's your wife. And even that's even more important now, because she's carrying Isaac, who is the promised son who was foretold. What did you see that you did this thing? Abimelech says to Abraham. Well, Abraham certainly didn't see God. He didn't see the right thing to do. He certainly wasn't putting his trust in God when he did this. Now Abraham's excuse is ridiculous.
Oh boy.
And Abraham says there is no fear of God at all in this place. And what's interesting is that Abraham going in lying like he did means that he was the one that was not having any fear in God at all. And he took his excuse and basically turned around and should stick on him. Fear prompts obedience. Abraham already knew that lying about Sarah being his wife was a bad idea. He's been told not to do it. He already affected the house of Pharaoh in Egypt. So he should have known not to do this. And his fear of God, he shouldn't have had anything to worry about walking in there and saying, this is my wife who I love. Now instead he goes in there and goes to his same old, this is my sister. And so Abraham thinks they will kill me because of my wife. Now, last time, Abraham thought they would kill him because Sarah was so beautiful. Now here, that's not what is mentioned in the text. Here, it doesn't say that Abraham said, Sarah, they're going to kill me because you're so beautiful, they'll take you and leave me in a gutter somewhere. This time, they will kill you because of my wife. Has to do more than likely, it's because
Daddy lied.
no, he thought that they would take Sarah and make her a status symbol as another wife to this Abimelech, as part of a harem. And when you take a woman from another man to make her a harem, you just discard him. He's useless. So she would have been, at this point, remember, she's 90 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And she's carrying a son. So it had nothing to do with beauty. Now, there are some people that write in Bible commentaries that, well, this time it's because Sarah became beautiful because God made her pregnant with a chosen child, and it regenerated her and made her look like she was young again. But there's nothing in the text that hints at this whatsoever, and this is just silly. So I'm going to go with, he was afraid that Sarah would be taken from him and he would be discarded, because that's what you did to the husband of the wife that you took in a harem. Now, Abraham does give this excuse that she is indeed his sister, being that they have the same father but a different mother, I believe it was. Or was it the
That would
same?
be half.
Well,
So,
it's still his sister. So he says, well, she is indeed my sister. But the thing is that, yes, that's true, but they're married and they're about to have a child together. And that's more important than him going around. And anytime you take a half truth and you speak it in a lie, it turns it into a full lie. When your intention is not to use it as the truth, it's a total lie. Now, next, Abraham says, when God caused me to wander. Whoa, pal. You're treading on very thin ice here, because basically what Abraham is saying to Abimelech, God caused me to wander around and gave me this life as a nomad, and God is doing all these things to me. Basically, Abraham is blaming God. He blames Sarah. He blames God. He doesn't say anything like he's doing anything wrong. So Abraham better watch it here. And we're going to finish. We're going to finish off with verses 14 through 18.
He's gonna pay for it when it's done.
Okay, verses 14 through 18.
Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen, and male serpents and female serpents, and gave them to Abraham, and returned Sarah his wife to him. And Abimelech said, Behold, my land is before you. Dwell where it pleases you. To Sarah he said, Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. It is a sign of your innocence in the eyes of all who are with you, and before everyone you are vindicated. Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, and also healed his wife and female slaves, so that they bore children. For the Lord had closed all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife.
Okay. Now, down here on the screen, you'll see what I have titled this section. Do you have any idea why I would title it that?
I don't know.
Because that's backwards, spelled backwards.
I was like, what is that?
Oh,
It's backwards, spelled back. Look at it.
Oh.
Backwards, spelled backwards. Strawback, straw cap.
Straw drop club.
Yeah. So then Abimelech took all these gifts and he gave them to Abraham, and he returned Sarah, which in my mind is completely backwards, because Abimelech didn't do anything wrong. He gave these gifts to Abraham, and it was Abraham that did all this stuff to Abimelech. He went in there and lied and tried to hold back things, and so honestly, Abraham should be giving gifts to Abimelech. Abraham should have apologized and given gifts. He was in the wrong. Abraham also in the past has refused gifts from pagan kings because he didn't want to be able to have those kings say that they made him rich. But this time, he accepts gifts from Abimelech. I believe this is an indication that Abraham knew he was wrong. It's an admission of guilt. Because, well, this time I'm going to take your gifts because I was totally in the wrong here. Now, what this is called is heaping on the coals of kindness, or it's Abimelech rubbing it in. He's like, well, you did all these things wrong to me, but I'm going to give you gifts anyway. That is the wind.
Shut up, wind.
Next, Abimelech says, Behold, I have given your brother 1,000 pieces.
With the wind.
Oh, good.
Shut up, rain.
I've given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. This is Abimelech being sarcastic and ironic.
wow, it actually stopped.
And,
the rain.
okay, Richard. remember, Abraham went in there and tried to convince everybody that he was Sarah's brother. So Abimelech says to him, "You know what? Give your brother this money. If that's how he wants to be known, not as the proud husband of his wife who is going to have a miracle child, then Abimelech is heaping on the sarcasm." Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech. So there were still consequences for Abimelech taking Sarah as his wife, even if he didn't know that Sarah was Abraham's wife. And the consequences were, it said that everybody in Abimelech's household had all their wombs closed so that they couldn't give birth or have children. So even when you don't know that you've done something wrong, there are still consequences for it, and that's what this shows us.
Yeah,
The-
that doesn't make really much sense, honestly.
Well, there are other Bible stories that illustrate this a little better and are a little more plain. So when we get there, I'll remind you of them. The overall lesson of this chapter is the chosen people of God aren't perfect. They still have trust issues, and they still have things to work out. The Bible wouldn't be that much fun if everybody was perfect in everything they did. We wouldn't get stories that we do.
Wouldn't be good because nobody is perfect, no matter
Right.
what.
And what the Bible shows us is that because even, we know that we're not perfect, but the people that we look up to in the Bible, we see their faults and the things that they're not perfect about, so that we don't have this impossible place to look up to. We have something attainable. Wow.
That's what I just said.
Yeah.
Shut up!
Please don't say shut up.
Not in
Grace
church.
keeps saying shut up, right?
Okay, children. All right, we're going to move along to chapter 21, verses 1 through 7. Okay.
You don't have your windows down, do you?
No, I don't have my windows down. It was still 35 degrees outside. So
I had my windows open yesterday.
it was 70. There's a difference. All right.
Genesis 21. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. Abraham called the name of his son who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age.
Okay. Isaac's finally born.
After 100 years.
Well, he was promised to him 25 years before this, but
Yeah.
Okay. The Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. It wasn't anything that Abraham and Sarah did right. They had many wrong turns along the way. What this boils down to is God's faithfulness to hold up his promise. God promised that Abraham and Sarah would have a child, and it is God that follows through on this. Now, for many years, I would hear all kinds of people say, God is faithful, God is faithful, God is faithful. But to me, it never made any sense, because what does God have to be faithful about? He's already God. We have to have faith that he is God, but what is he to have faith in? Well, this right here is a story that demonstrates that when God makes a promise, he goes through with it, and that's what makes God faithful. Now, up until a couple of days ago, this entire concept was very foreign to me. It didn't make any sense. So I learned something new here reading this story. So Isaac, like Jesus, had a promised birth. Jesus' birth was foretold, but it wasn't 25 years before he was born. Jesus' birth was foretold thousands of years before he was born. Both Isaac and Jesus had miraculous conceptions. Mary, Jesus' mother, was a virgin, so she should not have gotten pregnant. And Isaac had a 90-year-old mother. She definitely should not have gotten pregnant. So Isaac and Jesus are both come from miraculous conceptions. Both of the mothers in this instance, Sarah and Mary, were comforted and assured by angels. The angel Gabriel came to Mary and talked to her, "You're going to have a son, and he's going to do all these wonderful things." And the same thing with Sarah. God comes to her and says, "You're going to have a son. It's going to be yours. And yeah, you're old, but he's going to do all these wonderful things." They both happened in God's time. Like I just mentioned to Richard, Isaac was promised 25 years before he was born. They had to wait, and screw up and mess up and do all kinds of stuff that they shouldn't have done. But Isaac was still born at the time when God thought that it was right. And the same thing with Jesus. Jesus' birth happened at the perfect time in history for everybody to know about it. And also, just like Isaac, where Sarah is so happy that she has this son, Mary is so happy when her son is born as well, even though she would have been looked at as an outcast, a mother who wasn't married to her husband at the time that their son is born. So the comparison of Isaac and Jesus, as you see there, is pretty interesting. Isaac foreshadows Jesus in a way. Now we're going to listen to verses 8 through 21.
Huh?
We're almost there. Verses 8 through 21.
See, now it's weird to spend on camera.
Yes.
Ooh.
And the child grew and was weaned. And Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, "Cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac." And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, "Be not displeased because of the boy, because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring." So Abraham rose early in the morning, and took bread and a skin of water, and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed, and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water of the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot. For she said, "Let me not look on the death of the child." And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water, and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness, and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt.
Now, Isaac grows up a little bit, and he is weaned off from Sarah. So we're assuming in the ancient world he was probably about 3 years old when he was weaned. Now, think of Ishmael was 13 when Isaac was born. So Ishmael was 16 at the time. Or he could have been younger. He didn't have to be 3. And they have this great feast for Isaac, and Ishmael taunts his younger brother. The conflict is going from Ishmael to Isaac. Ishmael is making fun of his younger brother. It was foretold that Ishmael will have conflict with everyone. So this conflict between Ishmael and Isaac is inevitable. We knew it was going to happen. We knew that Ishmael, it says that Ishmael is going to be a fighter and a wild man and even be in conflict with his relatives. So that he's in conflict with Isaac is no surprise. Now, the contrast we have to look at here is Ishmael is the firstborn. He was born to a slave woman, and he wasn't promised. So if we contrast Isaac with that, Isaac was chosen by God. So he wasn't the firstborn, but as we see in the Bible narrative, a lot of times, God doesn't choose the firstborn to be the most important son. It's another son. So Isaac is chosen. He's born to Sarah, who's the master of the house, who's free. So Isaac isn't born into slavery, and Isaac is promised, Paul. Isaac is promised by name. We knew before Isaac was born what his name was going to be. Remember that Ishmael came to us when Sarah thought she would just do things on her own. So next, Sarah goes, cast this slave woman with her son. Cast them out. Sarah doesn't want Ishmael to have a claim on Abraham's inheritance. Ishmael is not going to be an heir along with my son. Now, the last time Sarah had an idea, let's take everything into our hands and have this son because I'm too old. It turned out not to work out that well. It turned out to be a bunch of trouble. And this thing was very displeasing to Abraham. Now, Abraham has his wife telling him to get rid of Ishmael, but he loves his son Ishmael because Ishmael is the firstborn. He's, at least 13 years old at this point. So Abraham and Ishmael have spent time together. It's his son. He loves him. Abraham wanted both sons. He wanted them both to prosper. But he also wanted a backup plan in case something happened to Isaac. He wanted Ishmael to hang around. I could put, Ishmael in there in case something happens to Isaac. But God comes to Abraham and says, do as she tells you to do. And it's God reassuring Abraham that he's completely in control. He says, listen, send them out. Do what your wife says to do. I've got this completely under control. Isaac is going to be a son of promise, and he's going to do great things in a great nation. But Ishmael isn't going to be forgotten either. Ishmael is going to do great things also. He'll be a great nation. And he goes on to found a great nation, the Arabian people. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also. Now, what's interesting about this is we know that Hagar knew this, because she was told, your son is going to be great and have a great nation. But do we know if Abraham knew this? The Bible doesn't tell us. We're not sure. We can guess. Maybe, maybe not. So the next day, Abraham takes bread and a skin of water and gives it to Hagar. Abraham was described as being really rich and having a lot of stuff, gives her bread and water, and sends her off. As rich as he is, this is all he does for her. There are some Bible commentators that say this is because God said, have faith in the situation. Maybe. Possibly. We don't know.
I do that in games.
Now, later on, as they're traveling, the bread runs out, the water runs out, they're traveling through the desert, their supplies are gone, they're near death. This was inevitable. We knew it was going to happen. She takes Ishmael and she sits him down under a bush, and she goes so that she can't see him because she doesn't want to watch her son die. This is a place that I hope that none of us ever have to be in, where we have to watch our own children die. And I can't imagine what Hagar would have been thinking at this time. And she's pleading for help. God, please come and help me. Make it quick. Just take him away. And God heard the voice of the boy. Now, Ishmael must have been crying to God to help him as well. And God answers Ishmael, not Hagar. Why? Is it because Ishmael was blessed through Abraham? Possibly. We don't know. It doesn't say. But it's just curious that God doesn't answer Hagar's crying for help. He answers Ishmael's. The promise is repeated from, remember, Hagar called God El Roi, the God who sees her. The promise is repeated that Ishmael will be a great nation because God saw her. Then God opens her eyes and she saw a well of water. Sometimes you're unable to see the help or the things that you need to accomplish what you need, even though it's right there. And this is a common occurrence. It happens. There are stories of people who are wandering through the desert and there's just an oasis within feet of them and they just can't see it because they're so weary. And what this story tells us is that this happens to people of God too. This well was probably there and she was just so caught up in her fear of everybody dying that she just didn't see it. So God opens up her eyes and it's there. And we're going to finish off with these verses. All right. Verses 22 through 34. Almost there.
At that time, Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now therefore swear to me here by God that you will not deal falsely with me, or with my descendants, or with my posterity. But as I have dealt kindly with you, so you will deal with me and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized, Abimelech said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abimelech, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart. And Abimelech said to Abraham, What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart? He said, These 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abimelech and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines.
Almost hit the wrong button. Previously discussed, we met in Abimelech, and we came up with the idea that Abimelech is a title. And here we meet another guy named Abimelech, who's a king of the Philistines. So it's not a coincidence. Abimelech isn't a title. It is a title. Maybe this Abimelech's the king of the same city as the other Abimelech was. We don't know. We meet other Abimelechs in the Bible, but they're actually names given to people. And Abimelech says to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. People notice the change when you follow and believe in God. The blessings that God has on your life are visible. People know that your life is different because of your belief in God. And Abimelech sees this in Abraham. And Abimelech wants to be on the right side. He wants to be on Abraham and God's good side. Now, Abimelech says, don't deal falsely with me. Falsely like saying, that's my sister. He wanted Abraham to be right up front with him and be truthful. So Abraham says, yeah, I can be truthful with you. We can have a peace treaty. When Abraham reproved Abimelech about a well of water, reprove. It's not a word that's used very often in modern English. It's kind of very foreign to us. But what the word reprove is it's kind of like a rebuke, but it's not done harshly. You're telling somebody something that they're doing wrong, but you're doing it in a nice way. He reproved him. He's like, well, there's this well, and it's technically mine, but your men have seized it. And because I'm going to deal with you without lying and not falsely, I'm going to reprove you about it. This well is actually mine, Mr. Abimelech. Can I have it back? And reproving is correcting in an honest manner to fix behavior. It's the opposite of dealing falsely, like lying about your wife being your sister. Abimelech doesn't know that this well is Abraham's when his men took it. He didn't even know that his men had taken it, but it does belong to Abraham. So Abraham takes animals out and they cut another covenant. Remember covenant cutting, right? Where you put the animals out and you
cutting the deal.
You chop the animals and you walk through them, right? So they do that here. But then Abraham takes 7 extra lambs and puts them off on the side to seal the deal, to make it stick. And that's where the name Beersheba comes from. Beersheba means well of 7 because it was the 7 lambs that are given to this Abimelech that make the name of this town. Abraham plants a tree. As we mentioned before, the trees are important because they last a long time. Abraham plants a tree here. Beersheba is the southernmost city of Israel. It's here in the desert. Now, they said that this well, and they say everlasting God. Now here we have another name of God that we're given. We've known God by Elohim. We've known him by El Elyon. We've known him by El Roy, El Shaddai. Now, El Elyon is God Most High. El Roy is God who sees me. El Shaddai, one of my personal favorites, is God Almighty. Now we meet El Olam, which is everlasting God. When you deal civilly with somebody, not falsely, it shows growth. Faith is recognized by other people when you believe, and this is Abraham starting to turn his dealings around. And that's where we get our full circle here. El Olam, everlasting God. And we will end on the song, Everlasting God. But it has nothing to do with El Olam.
Steve, are you going to sing
All
a
right,
song?
Richard, I'm going to need your help again because
Beep,
next
beep.
week I got to go back to that thing that just shuts everything off because it goes faster. This for some reason. Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah. because I opened all these PowerPoints and they're not sitting here. So then I have to go in here. I got to start the slideshow.
Let me know.
Hold it. Nope, not yet. All right, hit the button. So I hit this. And then I've got to start the music. I don't like what it did there. It's just spinning.
I don't know.
Why are you doing this to me? No, it does not.
I hate you so much.
Oh, the music hates you.
Uh-oh.
It'd be nice if it played. There we go.
Thank you.
Oh, silly. So it starts off. Oh, I'm turning it down. Whoops. At 30.
Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. Wait upon the Lord, we will wait upon the Lord. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. Wait upon the Lord, we will wait upon the Lord our God. You reign forever. Our hope, our strong deliverer. You are the everlasting God, the everlasting God. You do not faint, you won't grow weary. You're the defender of me. You comfort those in need. You lift us up on wings like eagles. The everlasting God, the everlasting God, the everlasting. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. Strength will rise as we wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord. We will wait upon the Lord.
The Lord is the everlasting God.
That's okay. Skip the little kid saying the thing.
Yeah, no.
Thank you all for joining us. Only went a little over an hour that time. but
Oh,
yeah, not that long. We hope that through
stop it.
we hope that through Abraham's example, we realize that nobody is perfect, not even the people that came before us that were so full of faith that the Bible reveres them and they're presented to us as heroes. Although we do love and look up to the people that came before us, these great heroes of faith, none of them are perfect. And through our example of Abraham here, we see that you are given at least a second chance to turn everything around and try to get it right. And like I said, we've learned another name for God. We've gone through Elohim, El Elyon, El Roy, El Shaddai, and El Olam. What, Grace?
I was gonna say, just remember that nobody is perfect.
Yes, that is very good. We hope that you all have a great week, and I hope you're able to catch us streaming somewhere in playback. And I hope you're able to join us next week.
Goodbye.